think like an inspiring angle to tragedy and suffering is the fact that we don't say that death is permanent. We don't.
Right.
And I think, ironically, this is highly ironic, but the soul, we're told in the Talmud, the soul is miserable during life. Right? Life is a life the way we look at life.
Try telling
Is
that to my soul. Keep going.
It's a fusion of body and soul. That's how we view life.
If you want to live forever, you don't.
And someone dies, death is obviously separation of soul and body. Now, for the interim, or for the duration of the time that the soul has to be harbored within a body, it's in fact very painful for the soul. So ironically, the pain that we have is actually the same pain that the soul has when we're alive. To the soul, birth is death. And to the soul, death is rebirth, which is very obviously opposite. It's a completely opposite
So
perspective.
what happens to the soul after it's free of the body?
Well, the same thing that happened to the soul before it became bound to the body. Right?
What was that?
Well, okay, so that's something to talk about. We know that the Talmud says, we're just working through kind of the accumulation of various Jewish sources. The Talmud says that all the souls that have ever been or ever will be are already in existence. So a new baby is born, there's new life. But what is new and what is actually not so new about that life? What's new is the body, even though the body is just recycled cells that have, recycled matter, right? What's new is the body. What's ancient is the soul. Because the soul is not within this continuum of life and renewal and the death. It's more static, even though it does have this touch point with the body. And indeed, it's just so we know we have there's a ceremony called a Shalom Zachar, which means welcome the male, which is a traditional Friday night party after the baby. We have two new baby boys in the neighborhood. There'll be 2 Shalom Zachars this Friday night. Oh, they're doing it together?
No,
Massey's Friday. They don't do it. Okay, fine.
They're devastated. No, I'm just kidding.
Interesting.
Now, why do we have?
They just had a boy.
Why do we make this celebration? Why is this? Why make a Shalom Zachar after the birth of the baby boy? Now, what's interesting? There's a traditional food that we eat during the Shalom Zachar, a celebration of the new boy, and right after funerals.
What do we eat?
Right, and that's chickpeas.
Okay.
Those chickpeas,
Well,
right?
it's amazing how that came to my mind, but I wasn't sure.
Oh, well, next time just go ahead with it, right? Now, why? The reason why is these are foods of mourning.
Right, go.
And when we...
Isn't that what hummus is made out of?
That's right.
Yes.
So when we suffer and bereave and mourn, we always think about the fact that this life is like we said. It's like this circle that turns over. Right now we're down, but we will once again, come back to life. And for the soul of the child, like we said, the birth of the child for the soul is as painful as death and pain and suffering and tragedy is to us. To the soul, it can't believe its freedom, its existence, its vibrancy has been just totally squelched.
Okay, how do I get connected more to my soul so I know what my soul is
Well, there you
thinking
go.
and feeling?
Well, that's life itself. But you're jumping way ahead, right? And hold that thought, okay?
Okay.
Now, the soul suddenly is constricted. It's refrained. In fact, the Talmud tells us something very bizarre. It says that the Almighty appoints angels to guard the soul that it doesn't escape. It's as if the soul is fenced in, it's jailed, it's landlocked in the body, and it wants nothing more than to escape. And every second it tries to escape, and the Almighty appoints 2 angels that are in charge of making sure it stays there. And therefore, to kind of account for the pain and suffering of the soul, we have this pseudo-celebration / mourning. It's celebration for us because there's new life, there's new opportunity, there's a new Jewish baby, there's new opportunity for mitzvahs and celebration. and it's delightful, and it's bringing the world towards Tikkun Olam, and we hope that the child will be an upholder of the great Jewish traditions and fulfill the great Jewish destiny, on one hand. On the other hand, we can't forget about the child's soul. The child's soul is constricted. It feels like its life has been stamped out of it. And ironically, for death, the soul is, untethered from the body. And while, of course, for us it's sad, we also know that the soul continues to exist. And therefore, there is always the silver lining, this hope, this inspiration, the knowledge that while we're dead in our form as body and soul, the soul continues to live forever. And by the way,
So,
well, okay, so that's kind of going a step further. We also view the body as holy. And the reason why the body is viewed as holy is because the body was a receptacle for the soul. So we have a body that's now harbored the soul for 70, 80, 90, 100 years, right? It too adopts some of the purity and holiness of the eternal soul. When you have a body is, indeed, it's a vessel. And it's a vessel that once it's done its purpose of holding the soul and creating this world of conflict of body and soul, once it's done that, we're done with it. After 45 minutes, it starts decomposing, right? Everything stops. But we treat it with utmost respect and dignity because it was once, it has the status of being a receptacle for the soul. And that's why if you talk to someone who's involved in the Chevra Kadisha, in the Jewish burial societies, and you learn a little bit about what happens with a cadaver after death, well, I guess that would be redundant, but what happens with the corpse, what happens is they treat it with such respect and dignity. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And, it's hard to imagine that in a hospital, the live human will be treated as well as the dead Jew is treated by the Chevra Kadisha. And the reason is because it is holy. It too is holy. It too has, it has meaning yet. And that's why we did all the ceremonies with the burial of the body, etc. That being said, like a body is a body is a body, right?
I just feel like we're so unlike the Indians in that we don't give anything back, not even in death. We don't give anything back to
What do
the
you mean?
earth.
We do.
What do you mean we don't give anything back?
No, we don't. We're in a casket that never decomposes underground and it can't be moved. And
Well, yes.
the person decomposes.
Yes, they always made sure. That's actually very interesting because I know in Israel there's no caskets.
yeah, see,
They
at
just
least
take-
we
they
don't have
take
a
the body-
casket, be okay with no
Open.
casket.
The
But
body is
even-
just wrapped in burial shrouds, and they place the body in the ground, they cover it. And even here, they actually make holes in the casket.
There's no bottom.
Now,
to the
but we're not.
casket.
But the term returning it to the
It's
earth,
straw.
there's no kind of holistic.
There's a
Well,
bottom.
I guess I'm
slats.
thinking about decomposition. The casket doesn't decompose.
Yeah.
Well, it's
does.
wood. Of course it does. Yes.
I know, but what I mean is it's a waste of land. I mean, even if it decomposes, you can never do anything with that burial area. You know what
Well,
I'm saying?
it's not a waste. It's a monument to a life, and hopefully a life lived with accomplishment and something that people could admire, and that's important. It's important for us to not forget our dead and to embrace.
I light a candle, but I never go to the cemetery.
Okay, that's your prerogative. But this idea of we even have in Jewish sources the idea of the spirit, so to speak, of the dead person can be accessed in a way. Like we go to.
Come visit me.
The spirit
Like
of
we
the
go,
dead person.
well, I know it sounds
Well, my
a little
mother-
bit heebie-jeebie, but
Well,
for example,
my mother and my uncle go visit my grandfather on his birthday every single year with a bottle of scotch, and they go have a party on his grave every year.
And on Tisha
there's a-
B'Av in Israel, they visit my grandparents, great-grandparents,
It's too much of a
great-great-parents,
reality check.
great-great-grandparents,
Wow.
and so on.
I mean, I go
It's,
out there
it's like
very-
5 generations buried on the
Usually
same
somebody
Same
place
plot.
in Har HaZeitim. And they said that the way they bury is to have you in a sitting position.
Where is this?
Because there's not enough space.
Correct.
Where?
Interesting.
Not just because, everybody's buried in a sitting position with the knees up
Where?
I understand. I didn't
in
know that.
Israel.
Huh?
In
Well,
Israel.
I never heard that before.
I never that either, but
Space.
interesting. Either way, I think
Yeah.
the question is, okay, so what does this mean for us? You know, so we have this kind of universal perspective of an eternal soul and a tiny little sliver in time wherein it has its purpose when it's united with the body. That being said, we have a belief that's one of the core principles of Judaism is that the dead will live yet again. And that is the idea of the resurrection. The idea that the righteous people will come back to life. Body and soul will be reunited once again. And in fact, this belief is so ironclad in Jewish life and living that the Mishnah tells us that people that question that, they are repudiating a core tenet of Judaism. They are rejecting a basic, foundational, fundamental element of Judaism.
So which body do you come back?
But you have
So that's
so
question-
many
that's your
bodies
question.
and
That's my
few
question. Which
souls.
body
So
do you
how
come
come
Okay,
back
so
in?
I have 4 answers. Ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Either the first one. This question's been asked before. Either it's the first body, because that's the original body. All the other ones are replacement bodies, or it's the last one, because that's the one that you fulfilled your purpose with, or it's a composite. It's some sort of mixture of
Do you
all
ever
of them.
know?
Well, and lastly, I think this is probably the truth. And like I said earlier, a body is a body is a body. What makes a body special and important is only the fact that it harbors a soul,
Life force.
right?
Yeah.
That's what matters for the body. So the fact that we don't ask, hey, what will you be wearing? You know, the tuxedo that you wore for your brother's wedding? Or, you know, the gym shorts?
shroud.
What are you wearing? Well, how come that's not a question we ask? The answer is because we view clothing as something ancillary to who we are. You take them on, you take them off, right? You swap them out, right? You have different clothing. Maybe we'll have the same relationship, body and soul. Whereas the soul is who we are, and the body are the fleshy pants that we could put on and put off as we wish. So indeed, it's not just means that your question stems from a body-centric attitude to humans. So we're a body, and therefore, okay, well, if we have multiple bodies, which one do we pick? Let's flip it on its head from a soul-centric perspective. If the soul is who we are, and by the way, when we come back to life, resurrection, Tchias HaMesim, we will be soul first, body second. The paradigm will be turned upon its head. When that happens, then the fact that the question of which body are we will be the same question for us as which clothing will we be wearing.
So
Because a body is a body is a body, doesn't change who we are.
are our souls?
Are you a different person on Sunday, Monday, despite the fact that you're wearing different clothing? Why
No,
not?
but last century I was a different person.
Well, I'm saying, but
mean-
the point is that
Yeah,
the
the
fact
clothes
you're
don't
still
make-
you, despite the fact
Yeah,
that
I got that.
right. So
I can
if
understand that.
right, okay. So then when Tchias HaMesim comes, the relationship that we have today with our clothing will be the exact same relationship that we have with our bodies.
But do
I
souls
want to know
have sex?
who I was.
Do souls have?
Are they male? Are they female?
Yeah, I
Does
think
it-
they're male and female.
So do souls come back only as males in male bodies?
So this is a question I've gotten before, and I couldn't really find a lot of sources on it. What I did find one source that says that Isaac, I think it was Isaac. Very, very hard to find really good, legitimate sources in this. Apparently, Isaac had. This was really bizarre. Isaac, like Abraham says to him, "Okay, we're going to go execute you on the mountain." The Almighty says, "It's time to take you for the Akedah, binding of Isaac. Take you up to the mountain, bind you there, and we're going to offer you up as a sacrifice to the Almighty." So there's this one obscure measure that says apparently Isaac was actually bound, and Abram actually killed him and sacrificed him. And that actually happened. And then Isaac was reborn with a different soul. Now, okay, just hold that thought for a second. Apparently, Isaac, while having a male body, had a female soul in his first iteration, and the second iteration, when he came back, had a male soul.
Okay.
That's what I've heard. I have to, so
But
that
you
that
know what?
that-
Why is that?
that's all from my head as well.
Yeah, but
so-
why
so-
is that any different than people on our planet today that do not feel they're in the right body? Their souls feel like they're one way and their bodies are
Well,
another.
this,
Why is that?
this gets to
No,
the
I'm
question
talking about
asked earlier.
No, I'm talking
Are you
about
sure? Wait a minute. I know, but I want to
transgenders.
question your premise, if you mind.
Yes.
Okay. Your premise is that people can access what their soul feels. And therefore, they're able to say, well, my soul feels male or female or the like, right? In opposition to what my chromosomes are. Correct?
Right.
I challenge that premise because I don't think we can feel our soul, what our soul feels. Because you know what? If we would, we'd go insane. Because our soul would love nothing more than to end this terrible misery and this terrible,
That might answer my question from my friend.
which, okay, but
Actually.
maybe, but
That it's his soul that
but
was
to
really at
actually
fault.
associate yourself as a soul, and I think this gets to your question you had earlier. How do you
Which was-
feel more like a soul?
How do I know what my soul is feeling, and
Well,
how
I
do
could tell
find
you what
out
your
who I
soul is.
was?
Well, that's the funny thing is, I could tell you what your soul is feeling. I could tell you what your soul is feeling.
Okay.
However, it's different to know what your soul is feeling and to feel what your soul is feeling. Let me give you an example. And I think this is, like you said, you highlighted a major, major central issue in Jewish life and philosophy. If you go a week without eating, scratch that. If you go 22 hours without eating, it's Yom Kippur.
I'll
It's
be fine.
You'll be fine, but you'll have a grumble or two in your tummy, right?
It's a pleasure to see you all tonight. I'm sorry.
Thank
to
you
disturb.
so much.
Tomorrow, here at 7.
So so as I said, so it's 22 hours after you've eaten, or if it's 42 hours, you're very hungry. How do you know you're hungry?
Your stomach
tells
is
you.
majorly
So
grumbling.
how do you know what your stomach is feeling?
You get internal feelings that you need.
Right, the answer is because the way we're oriented is that what our body feels, we feel. There are some people that lose senses. So, for example, people that lose some sort of sensory, some sort of nerve damage, and they're just like their hand on fire won't feel it. Their body is still suffering, their hand's still on fire, but that link has been severed. But we are linked with our body. So your body feels something, you feel something. If someone slaps you in the face, why does that hurt? Because there's a connection between what you feel and what your body feels.
There are nerves and
Now, that's right, exactly. And all of those feelings are linked to our body. If you, for a second, or even for a week, could flip it around, where you didn't feel what your body felt, but you felt what your soul feels. Then, going 22 hours without studying Torah, or without doing a mitzvah, or without praying, or without doing a kindness, would be as painful as 22 days without food. It would be exactly the same thing. And you know what? What would actually happen is that your reliance on kind of physical sustenance would be diminished, but your reliance on spiritual sustenance would be augmented. It means they're exact opposites of each other. And thus, the more we entrench ourselves in physicality, the less sensitivity we have towards spiritual matters, and vice versa. We increase our sensitivity to spiritual matters, we become more of a soul, well then we feel more what our soul feels, and as a byproduct of that, we feel less of what our body feels. So let me give you an example. Moshe, right, greatest man that ever lived. How do we measure, Moses, right? How do we measure his humanity? Like, who was he? Was he body or soul? He was both. Okay, but where in this spectrum?
He was more spirit than
He was
body.
much more soulful than body, right? What do we know about Moshe? We know a lot of things about Moshe. Moshe went up to heaven and the Torah stresses multiple times. Moshe goes up for 40 days and 40 nights and doesn't eat nor drink.
oh, he goes up Mount Sinai.
True. And he tells us several times, For 40 days and 40 nights, he didn't eat nor drink. Now, how is it possible for a human, like we said, his body and soul, how is it possible for a human to survive 40 days without eating or drinking? The answer is, go ahead, what's the answer?
He got so engrossed in what he was doing spiritually that he didn't feel the physical.
Well, it's even more than that. It's not like he got engrossed in it. His identity was as a soul. His he was linked to his soul and not to his body. And the more he divested himself of his body, the less he actually needed to tend to his body. So let me kind of elaborate on this point. What happens in Olam Haba? Olam Haba is where it's a world that's almost exactly like ours, just the opposite.
What does that mean?
Okay, everything that
Just
you
the opposite.
exactly. So where bodies and souls merge together, will be bodies and souls merged together as well, but it'll be entirely skewed to the soul, just like our world is entirely skewed to the body.
Okay, so we stress the physical here.
Well, not we
and
stress. That's who we
Olam
are. That's our identity,
Yeah. And
right?
Olam
Alamad's the exact opposite. So, for example,
Okay.
you could live your life here. Let me even just try to make it a little more tangible. You could live your life here and never once think of the fact that you have a soul or that you are a soul. It's possible, right?
And that's true.
It is
It's possible.
I
It
don't
will be
agree.
possible in Olam Haba to live and not realize you have a body. Says the Talmud, in Olam Haba there's no eating, no drinking, no sleeping. Well, why not? You have a body, right? The answer is, yeah, you have a body, but so what? Its agenda is not at all important. Is this making
it's
sense?
like genderless on top of it.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't know if it's genderless. It's the body.
It does reincarnate.
The body
So
just
body
is
does it
of
reincarnate?
immaterial,
Lesser importance.
of negligible importance.
Okay,
people
so
feel
there's
it, some
no
people
need
don't.
for the physical.
No, the physical exists, but it's almost
I've
theoretical.
had experiences
Is this
of-
making sense?
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
If, like, for example, first of all, until
It felt like
I,
I knew somebody from a previous life,
recently actually,
because
Okay.
there's such a connection.
I ever,
First meeting,
well, no,
that you would think, well, how can this be?
for some reason, the whole reincarnation thing
I had.
just
Okay.
doesn't do anything for me.
Doesn't do anything for me either.
Well, for
Go
me,
ahead.
Doesn't do
I
a
never had
single
that.
thing for me.
Okay,
because
but-
I have such a urgency in fixing,
I had a dream.
and I have a job with myself, it's like a reparation. I have to take care of myself and accomplish certain things. Things that I have set for
Okay.
myself.
Okay.
Here, I'm not worried about I'm doing the best that I can here. I'm the best person I can be here, the best mother, the best friend, the best, I try to challenge myself 24/7 in anything and everything I do. I'm not really worried. Whenever I get there, I get there. If I don't get there, I don't get there. Whatever, what difference does it make?
Okay, but you said reincarnation.
Yes.
Reincarnation is when the soul gets placed back in another body,
Okay.
right? It's living this world, round 2 or round 3 or round 5 or 500, whatever it is, whatever it may be. Reincarnation, we don't find
I mean, personally,
many sources about this being true.
Where's the proof of this? That's what
this-
I want.
I don't know, because there is no sources for it.
Reincarnation thing is the truth, the way I see it.
But my
Because you have to use
How many
logic,
times- how many
because
times
a
is
lot of
it-
people are so self-absorbed.
How do you know?
They go, what's going to happen to my soul? What's going to happen to my body? If I die? Do what's right here. And I think it's a lot of people. They're just like so. I'm not talking about because in your certain situation, but if you do what's right here, and I think some people are so into their ego, and I'm like me, myself. They're just like so close to what they are, who they are. It's almost.
Okay, but I think it's important to make distinctions between reincarnation and what's called resurrection. And I don't like these words in English because it doesn't sound good, because it sounds so Christian, I know. But reincarnation is not found in any source in the Talmud. It's not. Now, I'm not questioning the legitimacy of it, but I'll tell you, people like the Rambam, Maimonides,
Hold on a second, but if we're talking Moshiach,
whatever, that's...
But hold on a second, but how can you say that? Because the whole concept of the Moshiach, which really, I'm a Sephardic, and I was, my
She
first.
was raised with that?
Judaism, no, not at all.
Go
I
ahead.
never heard until the Chabad became like, they started like making, you know, the Mashiach.
Okay,
Mashiach.
but
You
we're
know?
getting all our terms mixed up here, right?
No, but what I'm
Let-
saying.
Let's
no,
go one by
no, no,
one.
no,
Let's
what
go
I'm
one by
saying,
one.
But hold on a second, because then like Victor Mashiach, when Mashiach comes, that's when we get reincarnated.
No, who said that?
That's what I always heard.
Okay, so you have to give sources. Okay, if we're not going to bring sources to the table, let's try to be easy
Yeah,
with
the sources.
speculation. Okay, let me tell you what the sources say. First of all,
Okay.
First of all, what's absolutely abundantly clear is that Mashiach and resurrection, which means reunification of body and soul, not that the same soul gets recycled, reincarnation, those things are pillars of Jewish faith. So much so, Maimonides makes a list of 13 principles of Jewish faith. Tchiyat HaMetim and Yemot HaMashiach, those two are on that list.
What are those two?
Well, the idea of Mashiach, which is the idea of this world coming to its perfection. So, for example, what that means for us is rebuilding a temple in Jerusalem. Jews going back to Israel, which, by the way, we're almost halfway home, right? The half the world's Jewry already lives in Israel, right? We are well on our way towards that goal. It means reinstituting Jewish sovereignty over Israel. We're kind of there. It's quasi, right? It means reinstituting sacrifices in the temple. Okay, we don't have a temple yet, so that's okay. But this is not something that's too hard to speculate, wherein the world comes to God and accepts. And by the way, even the Christians and the Muslims, Maimonides goes out to point this out. He says, these people believe in one God. It's just with slight modifications to that idea. So if that is tweaked and tinkered with, we'll have essentially the entire world believe in the Jewish God. That's the idea of Messiah. Right? Nowhere does it talk about reincarnation or resurrection or anything like that.
ISIS.
Okay,
Well-
but my point is that they're a lot closer to Jewish theology than the entire world was 2,000 years ago, when everyone, besides for the Jews, believed in polytheism or some variety of that, or paganism.
And they're destroying the idols which God told us to destroy.
So that's the idea of the Messiah. The idea of reincarnation, like I said, it's an idea which is not found in Jewish sources. At least when I'm saying Jewish, I mean classical, traditional Jewish sources like the Talmud, like Maimonides. You don't find it anywhere there. Thus, if someone says, I don't believe in reincarnation, they are not running afoul in core beliefs of Judaism. They're not. However, resurrection, what's called Tchiyat HaMetim, body and soul coming back together, that is a core belief of Judaism. Now the Talmud, I'll tell you a secret here, the Talmud goes and asks the question, where's the source from it?
But so Kabbalah.
Where's the source? I don't know about Kabbalah. I'm dealing with classical Jewish sources.
Okay.
Classical Jewish sources like the
Kabbalah
Talmud.
comes after the Talmud.
Classic, I'm not questioning, we're not trying to give hierarchy. But my point is that Kabbalah is a work of mysticism, which is what's called Torah HaNistar, the hidden Torah. And hidden Torah is hidden for a reason. It means it's not for us, lay people, right? It's hidden. Right? We're dealing with the tremendous corpus of revealed Torah. And we have so much information there, and that's that's the framework that we're working with. The Talmud says a question, where's the source in the Torah where we find the idea of resurrection, of bodies and souls reuniting once again? And it brings about 15 to 20 sources. I lost
In
track.
the actual 5 books?
But yes, in the actual 5 books.
Okay.
So there are many, 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 many sources, and if you want to know where to look this up, go to Sanhedrin, page 90. A on the bottom is where it starts, and it goes for 2 or 3 pages, very, very big pages, and really spends a lot of time on that. So, and I think that, like we said, this for us is, I think, tremendous consolation to know that, like we said, death is not final. Not only that, our existence as body and soul is not entirely terminated at death. Because while we're dead, and therefore we lost our opportunity to do mitzvahs, and of course we can grow and achieve and accomplish and develop and flourish anymore. Our soul is still in existence, and our body and soul, right, or body and soul, I want to say our body, but body and soul once again will reunite, and I think that is tremendously comforting. And you go ahead. Go ahead.
In Judaism, does your soul get to go to God if you take your own life?
Okay,
Well,
so
I didn't hear what you said. What?
does your soul go?
to
Commit
God if
suicide.
you take your own life?
Okay, so like this. Let me tell you what the Rambam says, okay? The Rambam tells us in the laws of murder that taking your own life is murder. He makes this abundantly clear. Now, does that mean that someone who is mentally disturbed is judged as a murderer if they do the unthinkable? I don't know. We're not judging people. We're just saying what the Rambam tells us, okay? And therefore, and the idea being perhaps is that you are not maybe the steward, but you're not the owner of your body and soul, of your life. It's not like it's your life. It's a life that you're entrusted with, you're responsible for, but you don't own it. And if you don't own it, you cannot voluntarily terminate it. It's the Almighty's life, right? It's the Almighty's soul. He owns the soul, and you have responsibility to care for it during the time that you have it.
Take care of your temple.
Exactly.
Okay.
But, so that's what he says. And he goes very strongly to say that people who commit suicide are murderers, and the Almighty will deal with them, which is a way of saying that maybe we ought not to judge them.
Or maybe each case is individual, and God will judge each individual case.
Well, yeah, of course. But that's true for everything, right? Everything is we're not the ones to cast judgment on other people.
Yeah.
That being said, so like I said, it's very severe. Does someone? So there is this idea of maybe not burying someone in a Jewish cemetery. There's a whole thing about that with regards to people who commit suicide. That notwithstanding, we're never sure that someone actually did commit suicide, because even if someone jumps off the roof, we're not sure. Was there a gust of wind that should have put them? Were they up there and contemplating suicide and ultimately choosing to not jump, but they lost their footing? Right? We don't know if we're able to actually point to someone and say this is a bad guy because they made a terrible decision. We don't do that. That being said, suicide is a tremendous, tremendous no-no in Judaism. Like we said, it leaves other people to pick up the pieces. It causes tremendous pain and suffering, and it's a way to kind of, it's very sad when people make such decisions and jump to a conclusion, no pun intended. But it's sad when people kind of pass off the challenges of life to others, Now, of course, it's much worse if there's kids and employees, and the bigger your circle of influence is, the more people are affected. But certainly, as a nation, we're all affected. When one of us does something like that, what does it mean to us
Sometimes a
collectively?
chemical imbalance.
Certainly. So we're not judging them, but the point is, as a nation, we suffer collectively. But once again, we don't judge them, and we know that their soul is still in existence. Well, now, will their soul or body have to pay a retribution for what they did? Well, that's in the hands of the Almighty. I'm not trying to exonerate anyone. I'm just saying that's the hands of the Almighty who's able to.
But for suicide, not that I'm like an expert on that one, but they say usually people that commit suicide, except if they have a problem with a mental problem, it's usually because they feel like they feel awkward, they feel like they don't belong, they feel like disassociated with society, and they feel like they have no place to fit in.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, but does that mean that they still have to make a choice?
Yeah, but what if somebody's like
and
you're
we
in
are
total pain? I mean,
there's no justification. Well, no, from the Jewish perspective, there's almost no justification for committing suicide. Like that being said, we have someone like King Saul, right? Shaul HaMelech, the first king of Israel. He committed suicide.
Oh, really?
Now he was cornered by Philistines, and he knew that if they got him alive, they would torture him and also demoralize the Jewish people. And therefore, he made a calculated decision to do that.
What about those at Masada?
Maybe those at Masada would be comparable. That being said, like we don't justify it, even if we understand people had pain. And of course, that's very sad. But I think, with regards to this tragedy or this kind of tragedy and any other kind of tragedy,
But that's dying al Kiddush Hashem, kind of, at Masada.
yeah, but it's dying Hashem,
And
but
not
it's
giving the enemy the pleasure of killing you.
Yes, but they did take their own lives.
Well-
Yes,
Well,
but
actually,
that's-
well, first
There
of
was
all,
only
first of all,
one that
From
took their
killing
life.
them.
Well,
because
historically,
everybody else-
That's
they kill
to
themselves,
keep
right?
the Romans
That's,
from killing them.
but remember, even that story is not historical because
It's not.
if they all kill themselves, how do we know that story actually happened, right?
Yeah.
Right? So there's this great narrative
Well,
of
the Romans must have some kind of writing that would say they were all
Well,
Well, they were all
well-
dead when they
Mhm.
arrived.
That's true, but we have this accounting of this great speech that was given. Let us die in our hands and not give them. Like we don't know if that actually happened.
Right.
That being said, I think in modern day kind of Israeli machismo culture, we kind of look up to the Masada people as being great heroes.
Right. That
To
they would
die
rather-
death with dignity.
Die than live in
Halachically, I'm not
slavery.
so sure that they were actually correct. Even King Saul is a whole discussion about that. Under what grounds would suicide be
So why
okay
did he
from a
commit suicide?
Oh, it's a big discussion. I'm saying it doesn't seem like he made the wrong decision. But would that apply to the people at Masada? Who knows? Who knows? We had people, doing kind of calculated suicide as opposed to kind of avoiding pain suicide. Either way, I think more broadly, when we look at episodes of tragedy and pain, it's important for us to maintain the perspective that death for the soul is kind of very different than death for us as humans.
Yeah.
And death is only temporary. That perspective, of course, should hopefully encourage and embolden us and propel us to try to make the most of our life and our opportunities when we have them. Because who knows how long we're going to live? Who knows how much more time we have to make our impact, not only on our lives and our families, but in the world?
So we don't believe in Dr. Kevorkian.
Absolutely not.
So even if, and I struggle with that, if you're watching somebody that's, at the end and there's so much pain and suffering, but they're just.
Yeah, well,
Can't give
okay,
them
so,
medicine for
well,
that?
okay, so like this. So you asked the question. So there's Dr. Kevorkian, I'm pissed off at life, I want to kill myself. And then there's terminal illness, where is it, right, so
She's talking
terminal illness.
It's
So,
like we're nicer to our animals than we are to our fellow human
well,
beings.
let's not jump to conclusions, Wendy, here.
Well, we are kinder.
but-
If they're
okay, but well-
terminally ill,
Okay, so we
you can put an animal to sleep.
that's true.
You
But
cannot do
we
that
are
with
not
us.
allowed to murder, even if it means to be kind, right? That be like the Talmud goes and says, if someone is dying and you close their eyelids, are you a murderer? We wouldn't think so. But you're expediting the death, even if it's only by a few seconds. We do not take the keys of determining when someone ought to die into our own hands. We don't do
What
that.
is a living will?
Huh?
What is a living will?
What
then?
about a living will?
It's not a Jewish thing, I guess.
What about it?
That they can unplug
Okay, so there's a
whatever.
difference. There's a difference between having a DNR, do not resuscitate. There's a
Right.
difference with saying, let's
Right.
withhold life extending procedures.
Right.
That's different than saying, let's actively put someone down. So it's like active versus passive.
So-
For example, I'll give you an example. It used to be that when they didn't have the oxygen running through the actual building,
Yeah.
they had canisters of oxygen. When those got empty, you got to replace them. So if someone's dying and they're suffering in pain, we can't pull off the oxygen and let them die, force them to die. But we could say, I'm not going to refill it. I'll do passive. I'll just do nothing and let them kind of fade away on
Can
their own.
That's
you
okay.
refuse to
That-
take the
That's
oxygen in the first place because you want a natural
Maybe
death?
you can. But the point is, you cannot actively engage in euthanasia, but passively under certain circumstances, You can. For example, the Talmud tells of Rabbi Judah the Prince, who is the architect of the Mishnah. He was very old and very ill, and he was dying. And his students were devastated. Can you imagine the leader of the people, the prince of the people, is dying? So what were they doing? In Mass, they were all praying. And they're praying that he should live and he should extend his life. And the Talmud tells of his maidservant. He had a maidservant who went to him and said, guys, quiet, let him die.
In peace.
Yeah, let him die. Don't try to extend his life. So that's not euthanasia the way we look at it. Right. He's not killing him, but he's saying withhold from life-extending activities, procedures. Another story, same incident. Rabbi Judah the Prince is dying, and there's a blacksmith. And the blacksmith next door is working and hitting the metal, right? Smashing the metal. Every time Rabbi Judah the Prince is about to die, the guy next door gives a nice clop on the metal, and Rabbi gets jolted back to life, so to speak. And the same maidservant goes over and tells the guy, take a half hour off, okay? Let Rebbe die. So is that euthanasia? Kind of, right? Because you are kind of expediting. Yeah, but it's passive versus active. You're not doing something as opposed to actively doing something. And that's usually the kind of the balance given in Jewish literature and Jewish halacha about this.
It doesn't matter how bad it is, you just have to let them suffer through it.
Well, you don't have to actively make sure they suffer for longer. The point is we're not entitled to kill someone. We're just not allowed to.
But you can give drugs so they don't feel pain.
True, but if those drugs are going to kill them, that might be a problem.
But the drugs to kill the pain.
You know, I know that my mom,
Kill the pain, but not to kill the patient.
Right.
when my mom was in the hospital, every day they came in, we need, you know, we really wanted her. What is it? How do you call it?
DNR? Do not resuscitate?
Yeah. No, I mean, we kept saying, no. You know, like how we're supposed to like give more, you know, like get her liver back up, her lungs back up, and every day was the same thing. Every day we're in the
Yeah,
hospital.
so the thing is that
Can we please put an end to her life and put every day like
either way, like I said, this
A month and a half.
is not. I'm saying it's not.
We don't give our organs to help others.
Oh, another question. What about organ donations? So like this, this is actually the problem with organ donations. It's not the problem. The problem is not. The problem is not that you're helping someone else live. Of course, we you know, if your liver to save someone else's life, why would you not do that? Whatever, or everything, your
heart, or
kidneys,
yeah,
exactly.
anything. Okay,
The
your skin.
problem with it is that to be dead, you have to actually be dead. Problem is, once you're dead, your body parts lose their value, right? So the problem is not the donation per se. The problem is that we're worried if someone signs up to be an organ donor, what's actually going to happen is they may
Not save you.
not the one like that, but they may harvest the organs while you're still alive. Exactly. That's why you're still alive.
Harvest the organs while you're still living.
Which is why there is a halachic
Yeah.
donor society. There's a halachic organ donation society wherein they guarantee or they assure that your organs will only be donated provided that either depends how you want to understand death, but either heart death or brain cessation of brain activity, whichever standard you want to go by, which is a question unto itself. Once that is finalized, once then is the thought of donating your
And
organs
then
Even
entertained.
though you're
That would be
still
fine.
living?
That would be fine.
Well, that's the thing. Once you're dead, that's right. Either way, like I said, it's not a very. I don't think it's very inspiring in a vacuum. This whole discussion, but I think in the context of pain and suffering, that the truth is we all encounter that in our lives. If it's not our parents, if it's not our siblings, if it's not uncles and aunts, and God forbid it's a young person or, right? We all have that. That's the one constant in life. All of us are going to die. All of us. That's just the reality, and that's the world we live in. But in this context, I think there is room for trying to find the inspiring message that Judaism has to offer on this kind of painful aspect of life.
Grow organs in a petri dish and
Sure.
Is that okay by
Yeah, why not?
Judaism?
Why not?
Just ask, I'm
Yeah, that should be
asking.
fine.
So can you use
Okay.
animal organs if you
Now
Sure.
I know.
Sure.
Genetically modified.
Yeah, and go add a few
Whatever you need.
cells to
Whatever
the
you need
petri
to- yeah,
dish and
exactly.
make some hearts and lungs and eyeballs and everything else.
Okay, guys, lots of fun, and look forward